called small company. Now, many of us would recall that prior to 2000, we had section 43A, where deemed public company concept was there, depending on the turnover or the capital of the company. Now we are going back again here to bring out small company with 50 lakh capital or turnover which does not exceed 2 crores. Although these limits government can raise from time to time, but the upper limit for capital is 5 crores and for turnover 20 crores. Again here also, the idea is that compliances should be simple. Not too many meetings are required, not too many filings are required. That is the main idea, so that one who is not doing big turnover or big business, then let him have lesser compliances. We all are familiar with the concept of associate company. This is a phrase which has been used for a long time and we all sitting in this room are very well familiar, but the Companies Act itself never found space for this. Now this has been brought on statute. Associate company in relation to another company means a company in which that other company has a significant influence, but which is not a subsidiary company of the company having such influence and includes a joint venture company. So associate company is one which has a significant influence. And what is significant influence? Significant influence is simple. For the purpose of this clause, significant influence means control of at least 20% of total share capital. That is, of course, we can easily understand, or of business decisions under an agreement. Now, how do you delineate 20% of business decision under an agreement? Now, maybe different promoters, they work out the agreement and control certain decision-making powers, which will account for perhaps 20% or whatever. But the point is that 20% stake is the one which in legal terms generates significant influence over the other, and therefore that will be deemed to be an associate concern.
Sir, share capital includes preference share capital?
Yes, because so long if it is not used the word equity and only share capital, all types of share capital will be included. Now, again, another very interesting concept, all of us are familiar, but how many of you remember that even today in the 1956 Act there is no concept like independent directors. It was courtesy SEBI through clause 49 of the listing agreement that 10 years back, decade back, it brought the concept of independent directors, and at that time I remember there was a distinct debate whether SEBI can bring something on statute which is not there in the primary act, that is under the Companies Act, through a listing agreement. Then SEBI said this is applicable only to listed companies, and SEBI is the body specially created for regulating listed companies. So these requirements are in addition to and not in abrogation of the existing law. So if you want to be a listed company, you follow these, otherwise you jolly well be a listed company, no problem. And therefore, even though so many amendments were carried out in the Companies Act, independent director terminology did not find place. It is only now it is coming on statute, or rather now it has come on statute, yet to be notified. Listed companies are already implementing. What is going to happen is, now it will be for the public companies, unlisted public companies, who also will have to enforce. Section 149 of the new Act covers everything. I have tried and avoided most of the provisions mentioning here. There are there in the statute, which in any case we have to study. Here the idea is broadly we discuss the subject. Now, independent director, if we really see in totality, it seems the belief of the government today is that independent directors are the panacea for all the corporate ills. They are going to land up from heavens and they will have a solution for all the problems faced by the corporate sector. And at one level, if you see, the creation of the post of an independent director itself amounts to failure of the directors. Because when there are directors on the board, they are supposed to be directors of the company, which means covering all the stakeholders' interests, or at least shareholders' interests. It only means because the board system of non-executive director has failed, and therefore now the question of independent directors. And there has been enough debate on this. What is independence? What is not independence? At what stage you will say independence is compromised? And that in the context of what professional fees should be paid or not paid, only sitting fees, or stocks should be given or not given. Now, of course, it is very clear they are only entitled for sitting fees and commission at the most if it is a profitable company, which as per Companies Act 1% or 3%, as the case may be, maximum can be given. Because that debate for a long time was raging that it should not be, the remuneration should not be so high for independent directors that they are no more independent, or it is not too low that they are not in a position to spend adequate time to do justice to their role. But one fact has been accepted that today more and more companies will have to have independent director. But sharing my own personal experience, I believe if managements are intelligent, they can really take good advantage of independent directors. Particularly if there are directors who have come there because of their professional background from different fields which are relevant to the particular company. And I see these days many companies are doing that they are picking independent directors whom they believe will be able to contribute to that company, so that they are able to take advantage of the experience and expertise of these professionals from different domain fields. And same professional, if they were to approach as a professional, they would be paying much more. But by taking them as director of the company, it also works out professionally much better for the company. And I find that trend is changing. Initially, when this was introduced, there was skepticism, fear, and but still there is a criticism that after all, who selects independent directors? The current promoters. And then how do you expect independent directors to oppose the promoters? But I think that is something with experience develops, and as an independent director you don't have to fight the management, or you don't have to be sharp or curt with them. You can always point out things which are going wrong or likely to go wrong or can go wrong, or things which can be better than what they are. And any safe management would see sense in this. Now here only one issue I have. When we look into subsection 6 of section 149 of the new act, the definition of independent director, although frankly it is hardly a definition, it will be a description of the qualities which if a person doesn't have, then he is not eligible to be independent director. And there is a long list, and one of the criteria that even if the relative of a person is associated or has been associated, that person may not be eligible to be independent director. I will just go to this particular provision. I feel it's necessary that we have a fair idea about the requirement for a person to qualify as an independent director. Now, first requirement, which I always found a little amusing, but then on second thought I thought that only speaks of the times. A person who in the opinion of the board is a person of integrity and possesses relevant expertise and experience. Expertise and experience I understand, but we have to say that it should be a person of integrity. But that also means, unfortunately, we have come to such a pass that statute has to provide that an independent director should be a person of integrity. So he will be coming and dealing with persons who are lacking in integrity. Now, but it is a hard and sad fact that it has come to that stage. After all, ethics and morality, no law can really provide. It can provide as a provision, as a statutory requirement. But it has to be the individual and the environment of the society which has to bring in. But so be it may, the other requirement, not related to the promoters or directors of the company, in the holding company, in the subsidiary company, in the associate company. Who has or had no pecuniary relationship with the company, with his holding company, with his associate company, with the promoters or the directors during 2 immediately preceding financial years or during the current year. Now here you will see how many holding company, subsidiary company, associate company, promoters, directors, relatives for last 2 years plus the current year. Which means at one level they want people, and next one is still more one. None of whose relatives has that. Person whom you are appointing should not have any relationship, understandable. But if any of his relative also, none of whose relatives has or had pecuniary relationship or transaction with the company, holding, subsidiary, associate company, promoters, directors, etc., amounting to 2% or more of its gross turnover or total of 50 lakhs or such higher amount as may be prescribed, again during the 2 financial years preceding and current year. Now, how are we to know? How am I to know all the relatives falling in that category to ask? Or as somebody in one of the seminars said, somebody wants to put me into trouble, he will go and have that transaction and then I will become ineligible to become independent director. Now here, government in the hope of ensuring that promoters don't bring in their relatives, it has gone a little far, and then as some promoters were saying, if this has to be strictly implemented and plus the tenure of independent directors, which having regard to the SEBI's regulations, will many of them will have to vacate their office. Where are you going to find so many thousands of independent directors overnight? Now, so far as we as professionals are concerned, there I will draw your attention to subsection E and clause 2, who neither himself nor any of his relatives is or has been an employee or proprietor or a partner in any of the 3 financial years immediately preceding the financial year in which he is proposed to be appointed, either a firm of auditors or company secretaries in practice or cost auditors of the company or its holding company, subsidiary or associate company, or any legal or consulting firm. So, chartered accountants, cost accountants, company secretaries, lawyers, advocates are covered, and many professionals simply call themselves as management consultant or consultant. So law has ensured that that also the consulting firm is covered, and there the requirement is that the amount of billing, if it is amounting to 10% or more of the gross turnover of such firm, then in that case such a person is not eligible to be appointed an independent director. Similarly, if a person is holding 2% or more shareholding, then again he is not eligible to be independent director. Former executives, former CEOs, executives, they are also not eligible for a period of 3 years. That of course would have arisen from practical experience, because some of the leading group companies I had seen, there as soon as he retired from one company, he was appointed independent director on another company. So that has arisen from that. So quite elaborate provisions have been made for independent directors so far as the statute is concerned, and SEBI has recently carried out exercise to align its requirements with the section 149 of the Companies Act. This concept has been under discussion for a long time, that every companies should have a woman director, and now this at the moment will be applicable to all listed companies and companies with a paid-up capital of 100 crores or turnover of 300 crores. Listed companies have been given 1 year to comply, others have been given 3 years to comply. So as soon as this provision will be effective, within 3 years, all the companies which are falling in that category will have to have woman director. Now, it is not mentioned that this woman director should be an independent director. So, as again it is being discussed, it would be one of the family members who may become a woman director on the board. Maybe the idea behind could be to make a beginning, because at the moment if they insist that women directors have to be independent directors, then many of the companies may not be able to fulfill this requirement, because it has been estimated that the number of women directors currently on the board are far from adequate to take care of the requirement which will arise by virtue of this provision. Friends, this is one of the very important provisions which we need to remember, and in my personal view, this can turn out to be a kind of a game changer, but in a negative way, it can turn out to be a notorious provision. Because by virtue of this provision, group of shareholders or even individual shareholder, where several other shareholders have similar complaints, can file. The fear which I see is there can be opportunities for trying to blackmail the companies, threaten the companies, that otherwise we will slap you with class action suit. And action may be filed in different benches that can be combined, and although I may not be party to that suit, because it is a class action, because I am also a shareholder, I will also stand to gain. If this is not properly regulated, we'll have to wait and see. But the way we sometimes see, like today, yesterday afternoon, let me share with you, yesterday afternoon session of the company law board was entirely devoted to one person who had filed dozens of cases against companies on the pretext that they are not giving me balance sheet or they give me late. He is a fellow who has been filing against so many companies, so many hours he's taking at the CLB. Bombay High Court has passed strictures against him but made no difference. Now when law itself will have this, it is supposed to be for a good intent. Matters which cannot be taken under 397, 398, those matters will be possible under class action, but it is supposed to be for the larger good. Under the disguise, so therefore there will be a need to be aware of the potential damage this kind of provision, if it is not properly regulated, can cause. Because as we will see under the new act, while it is good that the interest of minority shareholders has to be protected without doubt, but certain cases, how they can boomerang also, we'll just see a little later. Special courts. Now this is one of the very important significant change under the Companies Act. Today, when there is a violation of the Companies Act, where do we prosecute? The prosecutor goes to the regular criminal courts, the magistrates court, Esplanade Court in Bombay or other magistrates courts depending on the jurisdiction which is there. The courts which are already overloaded, and it takes years for the courts to decide. And apart from that, any of us who have been to the criminal courts, and particularly in the context of company law matters, would realize most of the time, most of the magistrates don't follow anything. Because we can hardly blame them. Whole day they handle all sorts of matters, barring company matters. And there things go easy, it takes its own time. Now for the first time, statute is providing power to create a separate criminal court, if I may say so, but it will be called special court. It will be of the jurisdiction of Sessions Court, of the level of Session Court. So equivalent to Sessions Court. Whereas at the moment, as I said, the matters go to Magistrates Court. So the level also will be higher. Direct appeal then can be to the High Court. But more importantly, hearings will be on day-to-day basis, continuous, and the person who is a judge of a special court devoted to company law matters obviously will have a better understanding of the subject than a person whose 90% or 95% work involves matters other than Companies Act. Therefore, there is every likelihood of speedy disposal of matters under the special court, and there is total flexibility to the government to create any number of courts depending on the need from time to time. And therefore, there is every possibility that once these courts are created and systematically run, then all prosecutions which drag on for years under the Companies Act can be expeditiously disposed of. But that, of course, like anything else, we have to wait and see how in actual practice this turns out to be.
Sir,
Yeah.
but there is a huge tendency even in sessions court, and this has been experienced even when the government appoints, creates tribunals under various laws. The adequate infrastructure is not there, adequate members, tribunal members are not appointed. So if the national level tribunals are not adequately staffed, so there is a question of increasing the strength of the sessions court. So it is time and again pointed out that high courts are understaffed, Supreme Court is understaffed, already not taking action. The budget of the law ministry is less than the money they spend on the helicopters, which was cancelled. So if you are going to keep a budget of 1,000 crores, and the entire law ministry you have to spend 3,500 crores on the helicopters. So with this kind of misallocation, how do we expect we can go on creating more and more litigation and more prosecution?
You have raised a very valid question, which I was to come to when I would be talking about National Company Law Tribunal. This was one of the issues I was to take up. Now that you have raised, let me deal with it. What you said is totally true, 100% right. But there are two aspects to that. One is you create a structure, second is you maintain that structure. Now that is where the government has been failing the people. There is a need for a specialized body, that cannot be denied. But whether you really have regard for that or respect for that or really you mean it, or like a typical politician, you are only creating an illusion of doing something rather than doing something. Now that is why I added in the end, we'll have to wait and see. That is because that doubt is always there. Now that you have raised the point, we all remember, how many of you recall Securities Appellate Tribunal SAT? The presiding officer, when he is appointed, his retirement date is known in advance. Government has 5 years to decide. And when he retired, for 11 months, there was no presiding officer. And who has to be of the grade of retired Chief Justice of a High Court? And what happened? I was myself appearing in some matters before SAT. Issue came up because as per the SAT regulations, in every hearing there has to be the presiding officer along with one member. And here there were 2 members but no presiding officer. Whether it was validly constituted bench or no, whether the bench has authority to hear or no, that issue arose. Even senior counsel started arguing on that point, whether the bench has the authority. Then government realized that after some time, as the GR notified that one of the members was the acting presiding officer. And he kept on acting only. And for 11 months he acted, and then he went on to become secretary in the law ministry in Delhi. Mr. Malhotra became the secretary in law ministry. Then of course new members came here and now there is a presiding officer. So a body where it is known in advance, well in advance, government doesn't take steps. But that unfortunately, as you rightly said, various tribunals, bank boards, nationalized banks boards are there. There are vacancies there. CMDs are not being appointed for some time. LIC had been headless for some time. And why go there? Right in our own city, city could do without police commissioner for 2 weeks. It would have as well done without police commissioner. It makes no difference. Same number of crimes keep on happening when commissioner is there or not.